America, my name is Osei-Frimpong. I come to you live every Monday and Thursday. Monday I do a relationship show. Thursday I do more of a politics show. And when I just say I do a relationship show, I mean I want the relationship that keeps you from getting divorced, not necessarily the relationship that gets you laid. And that's very important because when you actually are in a relationship, what you're willing, what you're trying to do is sustain the relationship, not extract something that's other than the relationship. And if you think what you're trying to do is extract something other than the relationship, whether it's a soft life or whether it's a business partner or something that's other than the unification of two people in a household, then you're screwing up because you can get that soft life or, form of pleasure or whatever outside of the marriage, so you're not exactly willing the marriage. And if you find another means, or if that other person finds a means for that same good, then they'll legitimately going to search for that other means. Right? So that's actually important. When you're in a relationship, a meaningful, intimate relationship, what you will is not some sort of particular object that is other than the relationship. What you will, what you act to when you act in the relationship is to preserve the relationship. Right? A lot of people get this confused and they just go in it as like mercenaries, and then when someone gets a better deal or somehow the deal doesn't work out, they want to return it and get a newer version. So that is unfortunate, and it becomes child abuse when children enter into the fray, because while a marriage prior to children is about the inner dispositions of the subjects and their concern with each other, that's realized substantively in the form of the children, right? So if you break up a marriage and there are children involved, what you're really doing is breaking up the subjectivity of that child in a way that you're just not taking serious. We just haven't taken seriously for, I don't know, since no-fault divorce became a thing in the 60s and 70s. We just never took that seriously. The emphasis was always on, well, make sure that the child knows that it's not their fault. Yeah, children know pretty well that it's not their fault unless it's actually their fault and you're bad in multiple ways. But even if it's not their fault, what they learn is that reason itself can't solve a problem. So you can't tell a child, I love you 100% of my life and this isn't about you, but I'm going to break up this family for no reason, no fault. Not because the other person did anything wrong, but because we can't, reason can't work this out. So that's two people who actually have rational facilities and faculties can't work out the problem that will sustain the family. So it tells a child that reason can't solve problems. Right? And if reason can't solve problems, that means it indicts rational agency in the child's life. And it also tells, and if the child thinks that the reason actually can solve problems, it tells them that the two people who most control their world and determine their needs, their particular way of meeting those needs, and how to actively pursue it, all of those things are incompetent in using reason. So it indicts rational agency in 15 different ways when you divorce for irreconcilable differences. It's actually better if someone just dies or gets deported or something like that, because then it doesn't indict reason, it indicts something external to the will and the reasoning of the people involved. When it's just irreconcilable differences, what you're doing is forcing that child to live in a world where reason doesn't solve problems. Where reason, and then it's just guns all the way down. It's just mercenary, rational agency and responsibility go out the window, because there's this one thing that's completely within your discretion, and you're just deciding that the parenthood doesn't matter. And I was actually thinking, I spent a lot of my time playing in orchestras in my teens and 20s, and I played in a lot of orchestras. And now that I think about it, I cannot imagine that there was one orchestra, the major orchestra, that were the players, especially in the string section, came from broken homes. it's I cannot imagine. You need to have so much together as a family to make it. Now, I played the oboe. I think maybe as you go farther back in percussion and the brass, you might be able to sneak through with a few divorced people. But it just takes so much stability in the house to communicate, like someone to practice with, like to generate that sort of excellence in classical music. Right, so I would be surprised. There are probably certain sports where the divorce rates are minimal. I suspect maybe swimming, like super competitive swimming, because you have to, the morning practices hit, and like you just need so much stability across time. And you can't do any of that 3 times a week or 3.5 days a week. I know they do custody 3.5 days a week now. But I don't, you can't create generational excellence in 3.5 days. It's an everyday thing. It's like thinking you could like brush your teeth 3.5 days a week, and that's fine. And maybe the parents will be on the same page in terms of like swimming or an instrument or anything like that, but probably not, because if they were, they'd be able to work it out, right? So there are differences that are irreconcilable, which means that the way of life at one household is going to be different than the way of life in another household, and anything that needs a consistent way of life to obtain is going to be frustrated. And we underestimate how many aspects of life need consistency. Can't be a 3.5 day a week thing. That's ignorant. And I say this, and I've gotten more hard on this as I raised my children, my excellent children, who both, like, we did a 5K as a family, the first 5K as a family on Saturday, and all 3 kids won first place. My 6-year-old ran it in 23:18. I think that's pretty good for a 6-year-old. But you know why you can do that? Because I work with them every day. Not necessarily on like distance running, but we do something athletic every day. I wouldn't be able to do that if it were 3.5 days a week, right? And that's my 6-year-old. My 9 and 11-year-old did very well too. All 3 won first place in their age divisions, and it's just not something you can do. So irreconcilable differences promotes the idea that reason can't solve problems. There was no fault. Nobody did anything. It's completely up to your will, and you can't actually work it together. So either reason can't solve problems, or the parents are fundamentally immature. Too immature to actually raise kids. Or you'll end up raising kids who will get eaten by my kids. And I don't want, especially black people, to raise kids who will get eaten by people who just got this one thing right. And so you just have to look at the con for what it is. People will tell you that irreconcilable differences is a fine reason to get divorced. You got to look for yourself. But no, you never will yourself in a marriage. You will the relationship. You will the relationship. And let's be honest, if you can will if you initially like the person, you could go back to liking them. You can work it out. And that'll take both people just wanting to will the relationship, will the unity of the family, at least till the children get out. But you have to will the relationship, not will some sort of satisfaction, particular satisfaction that's external to the relationship. And that means, if you've gotten fat during the relationship, you need to will, as part of willing the relationship, you will your ass back to the gym and you push off from the table when it's time. Like, that's part of what it is to sustain the relationship. But you will the relationship. You don't will your particular desire, because what you should desire is a healthy unity of the relationship, because the kid needs or profits from a unified family. If you want that kid to actually be able to have the executive function, to subjectively, to have the subjectivity to participate in other institutions of civil society without themselves being a mercenary. Because a lot of these divorced parents create little mercenary children because they realize, or the story that the parents have told them is that marriages are for mercenaries, and if you can't get what you want out of it, then just quit it. So they become little mercenary kids. Or they just become kids who actually aren't mercenaries, but understand that reason can't solve problems, so they just can't pull the trigger in any meaningful, types of relationships or institutions, right? So The damage you do to your kids, the damage you do to the subjectivity of your children when you tell them and show them through the structure of your household that reason can't solve relationships is reason can't solve problems is not negligible. Not negligible. It'll either make them skittish or like overly aggressive mercenaries. Like there's just, it's just really ridiculous. It's just really good. And all the stories we tell each other, like when I was a kid, it was that like, well, you know, if the other parent comes in like every other weekend, that's fine. Now they tell them, well, if it's 50-50, that's fine. No, you can't. Like childhood isn't 50-50. Childhood's all the time. They need constancy all of the time. If you want them to be able to compete in a civil society as their adults with children who have like attained constancy all of the time in some craft, right? Who have attained that kind of excellence. Like that kind of excellence is unintelligible to people who've had to kind of shift gears half the time. 3.5 days one place and 3.5 days another. It's unintelligible to them, right? So you're setting your kid up for a second, like the NIA, or not the NIA, not the ACC tournament, the other one. You're setting them up. You're already taking them out of the game when you don't take the stability of the family seriously as like a condition of their NIL. No, I don't mean NIL. Someone said that. No, I meant the tournament you go to when you don't make the NCAA tournament. Like you break up the family, you're automatically sending your kid out of the NCAA tournament and go to the NIT. NIT, that's it. You're already setting your kid up to maybe be the best kid in the NIT, but they aren't going to be Duke. They aren't going to be in that game. Like they're not going to be in the Final Four of the real thing. Like you're already setting them up for failure. So yeah. So I mean, these aren't guarantees, right? And people say like, well, you know, if a fighting household's worse than an empty household. No, it's actually not. No, it's not. It's actually not. It's they both need maturity, but it's not worse than just like child separation and communicating the sense that reason can't solve the problem. So we raised a lot of just narcissistic people, and then when they get married, it turns out they're bad at it. And so this kind of video should be in schools, right? Right? This kind of video should be schools, or at least this kind of insight where like part of what it is to be in a marriage is to commit to working it out, to sustaining the unity, whatever that looks like. You guys can make it look like whatever you want to look like, but it's got to look like it has to be a unity, and that's what needs, as both people will the unity, not some good or particular object that is separable from the relationship, because then you can get that object through some other relationship or some other end, and then the unity of the relationship seems to be some sort of discretionary good, right? So both people have to will the relationship as the end itself, and then do whatever it takes to sustain it. If you want the child to actually have a healthy subjectivity and a healthy respect for reason. And it's not even about the money. It's not even about the money. And, you know, there are all these arguments about how, you know, the benefits of like the multiple incomes and the division of labor. And those are all, that's fine. But it's about the unity of purpose in the child's household life that sustains everything for the child. And because if the household has a unity of purpose, that means that child has a unity of purpose, or has an opportunity of having that unity of purpose. And that's what you want if you want, like, you know, to create someone who could actually get things done. Oh, by the way, if you appreciate what I'm saying, and I think you should, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, and I'll keep doing it. I'll keep doing it. And I think it's important because a lot of people get this serious. A lot of people say that, well, as long as the child doesn't feel like it's their fault, then it's okay. Yeah, no, it's not okay. It's not okay. That's not what's at stake. What's at stake is the child's understanding that's been inculcated by the fractured household that reason doesn't solve problems. And so it's not even worth using reason to solve power. It's either you use problems. You have to use something else, which means that you could use drugs to solve problems. You can use money to solve problems. You could use something external to your mind, working with somebody else to solve problems, because your mind working with somebody else doesn't solve problems, because other people can't be trusted in that relationship. So there's a hoax. There's a hoax that goes into liberalizing the culture around divorce and kind of underestimating the impact of a fractured child, a fractured whole household on a child. Even if you need to get two separate houses next door, that still doesn't that's still kind of a unified sense. It's just the idea that you go 3 days for 1 week and 3 days with another. The idea that there are two incompatible, irreconcilable particular ways to be is ridiculous. So someone it just tells them that reason can't reconcile problems, because this is something that's 100%. This isn't an external factor. Like I said, this is one thing if a parent dies, or if a parent gets sick, or if a parent does something. But this is irreconcilable. That means differences in a way that both people have 100% control of the situation. They just can't bring themselves to work it out because they're too immature to work it out. And that is the damage. That is hugely damaging to the subjectivity and the agency of the child, who needs to actually depend on reason and work with other people who now knows are just mercenaries, right? So someone says, you mentioned at one time how divorced kids deserve a lawyer. Well, I don't actually think that's divorced kids deserve better parents. They're kids don't know enough. Kids aren't self-sufficient outside of their household. That's what makes them kids. So they get the information that they need to interpret the world, or they should get it, from their parents, but they're getting two different versions that are mutually exclusive from both parents about how to interpret the world. And that's gonna lead to kind of either indifference, apathy, or nihilism that's not really particularly healthy if you want to raise self-determining kids who participate in institutions with the sort of fidelity and reliability that I think we want our kids to be able to do. There's a reason why, even if you're divorced, you don't want your kids to be. Or if you do, you're just bad at parenting. It's a culture of child separation from their parents, and it's a culture of bifurcation of the soul, even their subjectivity. You're telling them that there are two particular ways of life that are incompatible, but both supremely important, and that's just a recipe for them believing that there's nothing. All right. Thank you for your time. I believe you should go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, and help me do this. And I will see you on Thursday to talk about something completely different. Peace.